what we're building for the first time, there's something to bring that back onto artist owned and operated channels and bring all this fan art that's scattered all over the internet back under one roof and do it in a way where the artist actually owns that data. They own that relationship. They can engage with these people directly.
Welcome to W3G, the official podcast for Myosin.xyz and your go-to hub to learn the latest developments in growth and marketing in the wild and wonderful world of Web3. I'm Julie Octaviano.
And I'm Blake Minaho Kim. Tune in each week as we talk to the best and brightest and keep uncovering insights so we can all grow together in the world of Web3.
Today we'll be speaking with Derek Davies, president and co-founder of Medallion.fm, a leading platform empowering musicians to use Web3 to take back control of their communities from big tech.
Derek is a longtime music industry OG, starting his career with Neon Gold Records, where he was working with artists like Passion Pit and Ellie Goulding, which led him to build Medallion.fm, where he is now empowering musicians like Tycho, Santigold, Greta Van Fleet, and many more to collaborate and co-create with their most loyal fans.
We're excited to share our conversation about the nature of the music industry and how Web3 is helping to solve some of its biggest pitfalls, and how musicians and fans alike can start to enter this new frontier of music fandom and community.
So without further ado, let's get into it. Here's episode 9 with Derek Davies.
Hey, Derek. Thank you so much for joining us today. How are you doing?
I'm good. Thanks so much for having me here, guys. I'm very excited to be chatting to you both.
Yeah, we are so excited to start chatting through all things music industry, blockchain technology, collabing with music. I actually was playing around on Medallion.fm the other morning just to get, familiar with the platform ahead of our conversation. I think I even joined Santigold's fan club, and it was such a cool experience. So as I mentioned, I'm super excited to kind of dig into everything and what Web3 tech is unlocking for music. But before we do that, we always love to start with origin stories. So with that being said, would love to hear about your journey, how you found your way to music. Eventually, I think starting Neon Gold Records, if my research serves me right, and then now Web3. So yeah, would love to have you take it from the top.
Yeah. So that's a pretty decent synopsis. Yeah. So I started a record label called Neon Gold Records in my NYU dorm room a little over 15 years ago now, back in 2008. And it was kind of actually at the sounds quaint now. It's kind of at the pinnacle of like collectability and technology in the music industry at that point, in that it was kind of a music blog that became a record label specializing in these like limited edition 7-inch vinyl pressings. And so our very first release was Passion Pit, their debut single Sleepyhead, back in 2008. And from there, we went on to release debut singles of everyone from Burning in the Diamonds to Ellie Goulding, Conopop, Nick and Famous, Gautier, et cetera, et cetera. We parlayed that into a joint venture with Columbia Records right out of college in 2010, where we worked for 3 years, which allowed us to kind of graduate to full-length albums and multi-album proper campaigns. And there we signed St. Lucia, a band called Magic Man, Haim, and then in 2014, moved over to Atlantic Records, where we spent the better part of the last decade, where we were reunited with Marina and the Diamonds, Charlie XCX, Christina and the Queens, Matt Nation was a big breakthrough success of ours in the past few years, The Knox, and then more recently, Noga Erez, who's the biggest artist in Israel, and a singer-songwriter by the name of Joe P. And, throughout that full, I guess it was 10, 15 years in the music industry, I had realized, we were always very much like the most artist friendly major label, I suppose, but I was kind of becoming increasingly disenfranchised with the kind of deals that we had to offer artists within the parameters of the major label system. And when I first became aware of NFTs towards the end of 2020, I think it was like September, October of 2020, it was right when RAC and Blau were first starting to experiment. Nifty Gateway was first starting out. It really seemed like there was this amazing potential here around actually like creating value around music and around art that hadn't been available to musicians in a long time with how the current music industry landscape was trending. And so around that time, I went down the rabbit hole with 3 of my Neon Gold artists at the time, The Knox and Young and Sick and Pussy Riot, and had a bunch of success with all of them in that kind of like early like music NFT Nifty Gateway gold rush of like February, March, April 2021.
Yeah.
And while it was a great time. And while it was amazing to see like, our creators get the bag, so to speak, after, 2 years of lost pandemic touring income,
Yeah.
it also was very clear that like what was happening was not necessarily like sustainable or scalable.
Yeah.
It did feel like it was a bit of a bubble, but that there was this incredible technology under the hood that had the potential to really like revolutionize the artist fan relationship if administered in a way that was like more accessible and digestible
Yeah.
to the average fan. The 99% who were not crypto native, didn't have a digital wallet, weren't comfortable with cryptocurrency, et cetera, et cetera. And so around that time, I put my head together with two old friends of mine, my co-founders, Stephen Ballamarescu and Matt Jones, and started thinking about, what could a platform that empowered artists, gave artists the tools to onboard their fans into this space in a way that felt accessible and not overwhelming. Um, and so we developed that concept out and launched Medallion in February of 2022. And then actually launched the community platform product at the end of last summer. And we're now live with 8 artists. We launched with Tycho in August of last year and followed quickly with Jungle, Ross, Santigold, Millennium, Palais Royale, Greta Van Fleet, and then most recently, My Morning Jacket 2 weeks ago. So it's been an amazing run, amazing experience. We've got an incredible team, nearly 20 amazing folks on the core Medallion team at the moment. And we are really excited to kind of continue this momentum and scale to many more creators from here.
That's incredible. I think that journey you just took us through, right? Just all the way from 2008 all the way to here, just hearing some of those artists. I mean, I remember Passion Pit when they first came out. I actually wasn't even aware that you were part of that. So that's cool to hear. And just all the things you've done since. So
Oh, yeah.
incredible.
Passion Pit and Ellie Goulding is like all I listened to in college. So right up my alley.
Passion Bit, yeah. Passion Bit was a dream to start out with. I think that's still just an all-time song for me. And so being able to play even a minor part in that song's story is a huge honor to this day.
Bravo.
Yeah.
And now you're doing
That's
some
on
other
your
things.
guys' official, or almost official, right? 1-year anniversary. You said you started February of last year.
Yeah, it's been an incredible year. So we closed our seed round February last year, and then launched the product in August. So, it's been fast and furious,
Nice.
but I think the industry response and the fan response has been incredible so far. And so the results have been really encouraging as we, help artists to think about how to scale the concepts of Web3 to their fans and bring their fans into the world with them.
I love that. And so I'd actually love to kind of double click on that, right? So let's dive a little bit deeper because I think earlier you actually alluded to kind of the challenges with the current music label system, right? And that whole industry and how it works, right? So I would love to kind of dig a bit deeper into like, what are the common gaps and pitfalls that you see that, you think that Web3 is helping solve for, right? So what are the issues that I think that you've been really addressing, like very specifically? Because I think, and there's some other questions that I'd love to ask later, but I think I have some friends who, they are in music or they, some of them have worked at bigger labels and some of them are independent. And I think there is a lot of skepticism today still around like what this can unlock. So we'd love to hear straight from you as someone who's been in this space for a long time, right? What is it about the current industry that's broken and how is Web3 helping solve for that?
Yeah, I mean, there's a few. I mean, there's a lot of problems. So that's kind of like where to start. I think some of them have persisted for years now. Others are kind of more recent trends. But I mean, I think the biggest problem plaguing musicians of all sizes today is that right now, artists' fan base, they live in these black boxes all over the internet, right? You've got your fans over here on Instagram, over here on Facebook, over here on Twitter. And none of these black boxes talk to each other. And like arguably the biggest black box of them all is kind of stranglehold that promoters and venues have on ticketing. So you can be a massive artist who plays a sold out show at Madison Square Garden, but then you don't actually have information on any of those people who came to the show or know anything about them to actually reach out to them directly. And the opacity of the current industry, I think there's no other industry in which it would be acceptable to say, hey, we're going to separate you from the customer data around your most valuable product. And that's just the way things that have evolved in the music industry to this point. So building tools for artists to better engage with their audiences has really been our top priority from day one with Medallion. So everything that we're building with Medallion is built natively into the artist's website. So it feels that one kind of familiar and accessible to fans. It lives at heimer.sigaroth.com. Heimer means home in Icelandic,
Mhm.
or electrictomb.gretavanfleet.com or tychomusic.com/community. And it's a frictionless experience that doesn't feel overwhelming to fans. It doesn't feel like they have to go sign up for something new, download an app, et cetera. They feel like they're just clicking into the VIP section of their favorite artist website. And the artists own 100% of that audience data. So they own those relationships 100%. We can't market to them, to that data without those members without their permission. And it's effectively allowing artists to build their own social networks effectively, where they actually own the audience data and can engage with those fans directly. And then I think, that's obviously been kind of a tale as old as time in the music industry, at least since the rise of social media. And I think artists are becoming more and more aware of this. And I think they are, as social platforms become more and more overwhelming, and I guess toxic, you could say, artists that have the largest social following that I've engaged with, which are arguably artists who kind of owe the largest parts of their career to social media, also carry the most trauma from having these large followings and having to engage with socials and the kind of blowback that they receive. And whether it's anonymous trolls, it's no longer a pleasant place for artists to be. And so with Medallion, we're very much presenting a world where you may have 10 million monthly listeners and 3 million followers on Instagram and 10 to 50,000 people in your community. But those 10 to 50,000 people are going to be your biggest evangelists. They're going to be the people who move the needle for your business. And we really want an artist community to feel like a sold out show in their hometown, where the artist knows everyone, that these know each other, and you're able to foster a real sense of community that's not possible on social platforms. And then the other, issue that has been increasingly problematic in recent years is kind of like the TikTokification of everything. Platforms and the algorithms forcing everything to trend to shorter and shorter content. So now all of a sudden the current trend, it's 60 to 90 to second songs that are trending shorter and shorter to catch the algorithm. And I had someone complaining to me in a major label marketing department the other day that was saying currently data is showing that 2 to 3 second content is performing best on Reels and TikTok. I was like, my God, 2 to 3 second content. This is insane. And music videos are becoming a lost art form. They're just not something that labels are willing to invest in anymore, because everything they're not seeing the ROI. Everything that's actually catching the algorithm is shorter form content, more casual content. So it's all right, let's just post a bunch of TikTok and Reels and shorter, more lightweight, inexpensive content. And then if something catches the algorithm and goes, maybe then we'll actually invest in that music video. I think music videos arguably have had push culture forward more than any other art form over the past 30 years. And so to just kind of to have them, to risk them falling by the wayside because algorithms are trending shorter and shorter, it's a pretty dire situation. And so this idea that Web3 can create a space, these communities can create a space where artists can share art directly with their fans as they intended it. So, release the 5-minute edit of that song, release the director's cut of the music video. Here's this space where you could, release this demo or this B-side, something that you'd never want to release on Spotify or Apple for risk of it, showing up as your latest release, your latest single, or fucking up the algorithm for your next single. Let's create this shared space for artists to engage directly with their fans. And, the 5-minute recap of the tour stop in Milwaukee is not something that really belongs on socials. Socials are really for the broadest content possible, but there's plenty of fans who want to see all 5 minutes of that, and you can put that in. So we've got a number of artists. I think Play Royale is a great example where they're posting, 15 to 20 second recaps of each tour stop on socials, and then releasing the full 2 or 3 minute video in their community each week when they're doing their tour roundup. So thinking of, your Web3 community as a space where you can really kind of convey your full length, unedited creative vision. I think it's a really helpful place to start as we start thinking about, what does this technology unlock beyond the most talked about things, which is, really owning your fan relationships and having that direct audience engagement.
I love to dig a little bit deeper into that, right? So number one, that was fantastic. I think you're just spouting off a lot of alpha and some great knowledge, right? And some great thoughts in terms of, it's just the nature of the music industry and what Web3 can really unlock. We'll love to better understand, specifically on the Medallion platform when it comes, because I think within Web3, right, we always talk about it's community led, and that's kind of the whole point, right? Ownership over digital assets. People can actually be a part of a real community. I was digging through some of the data yesterday, right? I saw that some of your communities have over, 20,000 followers and users. So when it comes to kind of scaling up these communities, like how does that work? Number one. And then I guess through the Medallion experience, what have you guys been finding? Like, what is the actual, I guess, point of experience, right? Is it, and this is more just to educate, the listeners, right? If an artist were to sign up, whether they are at that scale or whether I guess they should be kind of at a bigger scale, right? But then when they come in, like, how does that work? What does the engagement between the artists and their community look like, right? And so, what can you guys unlock, or what can be unlocked for the musician and their fan base? I guess, yeah,
Yeah. So with
more
Medallion,
specifically,
we are
yeah.
yeah. So with Medallion, we are kind of taking like a more top down approach than I think
Yeah.
a lot of other Web3 music ventures, in that we are, we're collaborating with some of the biggest artists in the world. We believe that creators are the most influential movers
Mhm.
in our culture. And so our goal is to really, how do we fast track kind of mass adoption of this technology and scale this to as many people as possible? And so for that reason, we're starting with some of the biggest creators in the world with the goal of, launching while we're in this kind of initial private beta, highly curated
Yeah.
phase of the company, launching with some of the biggest artists in the world, onboarding as many fans as possible, so we can then take those learnings and then scale things into a more
Mm.
self-serve, scalable product that can then scale to hundreds and thousands of creators of all sizes from there.
Mm.
So with each launch, we're really talking to artists, and basically we just want to meet them where they're comfortable. Like, we're happy. Some of these
Yeah.
artists have had existing discords, have sent a mailing list,
Mm.
text lists. So I think it's, with the, we sit with the artists and say, do you want to launch this just to your Discord? Do you want to go wide on socials day one? Keep it to the newsletter, roll it out in a more scaled approach, and it's up to their comfort level. So we've had taken a different approach with just about every artist that we've launched with, and so most of our communities are thousands, if not tens of thousands of members, and it's been incredible to see the adoption. I think in the instance of, I think Tycho is a great example, Greta Van Fleet. Like, they both had active Discords they were promoting for some time prior to launching their Medallion communities. Tycho had a Discord he was promoting for 9 months prior and had 900 members in it. And within 24 hours of launching his Medallion community, he had 2,000 signups. And similarly with Greta Van Fleet, I think they launched their Discord 3 or 4 weeks prior, and had about 3,500 people in it and had nearly 10,000 signups day one. So I think there is still, I think at the moment, a lot of people are turning in the music industry to Discord, and a lot of major labels are waking up to Discord and saying, "Oh, here's a great new way for artists to communicate directly with their fans." And while it's true that Discord is free of algorithms and advertisements for the time being, it's still a situation where at the end of the day, like, the artist doesn't own that data. It's another. It has the potential to turn into another Web2 situation all over again. But also, despite not necessarily having any Web3 elements to it, Discord is quite overwhelming as a new fan experience. It's pretty complicated.
A lot for anyone.
And it doesn't feel particularly custom. I mean, it's overwhelming for me, and I've kind of been having to use it on a daily basis for almost 2 years now. So I think the idea, even with this Web3 piece to what we're building, and it's very much a Web 2.5 approach with the crypto of it all kind of abstracted away, where you can sign in with a digital wallet, or you can sign up with an email address as you would for anything else on the internet. Even with that piece in there, it's still a more kind of inviting and accessible experience for fans. I think a big part of that is kind of, building it in a way that feels familiar and accessible to them at once.
Mhm.
So by virtue of the fact that it's built natively into the website, but also completely white label and feels like an extension of the artist's creative universe.
So something that you said was, obviously you're building this experience ultimately too, keeping in mind to drive mass adoption of Web3 and Web3 tech. So with that being said, when you started Medallion, I imagine the first thing you had to figure out was how to get the word out about this thing, both obviously to the audience, audiences throughout traditional, let's call it Web 2 and Web 3 alike, but also to the artists that you were trying to join the platform. Again, something else you mentioned was you meet artists where they're at. So I guess similar to a record label in which you're trying to sign on, dope artists while also helping to market them to the world. I imagine there's a lot of overlap in terms of marketing and PR between traditional record label marketing PR and now implementing, with a Medallion, this whole Web3 tech layer to it. So would love to have you kind of break down how you're handling, again, marketing, PR with Medallion. What are kind of like some of the similarities and then I guess some of the differences as well with music marketing within Web3 versus, the traditional music ecosystem?
Yeah, I mean, with Medallion, we've been very fortunate where between myself and my co-founders, we've got 10 to 15 years of incredibly strong relationships directly with artists. So there is already this layer of trust there, whether it's my artist on the Neon Gold side, my co-founder, Matt Jones, was the founder and CEO of a company called CrowdSurge, which then merged with Songkick. And, through that, his personal clients were everyone from Adele to Mumford and Sons to Chance the Rapper and Andrea Bocelli. And so, there's 10 to 15 years of trust executing kind of global campaigns at the highest level for the biggest artists in the world. So I think one thing that we heard consistently throughout 2021 and to this day was, all of these managers and many artists being like, we've been pitched every NFT Web3 idea under the sun for the past 18 months, but A, we know you guys and we trust you guys. And B, like, this is the first thing that sounds like it could actually like make sense for the artist and our fans, that they would actually resonate with them. So I think like having those relationships, but also more importantly, like having that understanding of how artists think, how managers think, most importantly, how fans think, has really kind of been the superpower for us starting out. And so, by virtue of that, we actually been in a fortunate position where we haven't had to do a ton of marketing in order to onboard artists. I think most of the marketing we do and then most of the PR, it's really around like, how do we help the artist message this to their fans? And in terms of like putting out the word out more broadly, we'll collaborate with each artist PR team on, communicating the releases to the wider industry. But our biggest focus is, how do we hold hands with the artists to help them message this in a way that will resonate with their fans? Because I think, there's a lot of fans who shut down at the word NFTs. I've heard a lot of like overblown headlines, cryptocurrency and NFTs are boiling the oceans. It doesn't really matter that we live in a post merge ETH world now. It doesn't matter that everything that we're minting is on Polygon. It's, kind of like, it's become this kind of trigger word. And whether it's token or NFT or crypto, a lot of fans just shut down before the conversation even begins. And I think that's, there's a lot of reasons that have led to that over the past 18 months or so. But I think the big thing to think about is like, a lot of artists came into the space and were like, I'm going to drop an NFT because that's what everyone's doing. And in fact, it's like, we need to not be focusing on the technology. Let's focus on the utility and the experience and what it can mean for fans. And so, you won't find any mention of NFTs or really Web3 and in any of our messaging. It's really about how do we meet fans where they are with things that they're excited about? Because, collectible digital assets that have some kind of speculative value has proven not to resonate with the average fan. So we're really talking to artists about how we can use tokenized digital assets to amplify their existing business verticals and create immersive and special experiences for fans that they couldn't have or engage with otherwise. So I think that's really been the name of the game is, talking with an artist and saying, all right, cool, the album's out here, you're going on this tour then, how do we integrate this with the community? How do we get these people first access and elevated experiences because of their willingness to participate with you in this space? And how do we create an actual space where artists and fans can create value together? I think there's a lot of the rhetoric around Web3 is that Web3 creates a space where artists and fans sit on the same side of the table and are creating value together, but short of, someone buying an NFT and seeing that value go up, that's a pretty slow burn concept for the average fan to grasp. And so creating rails where artists can actually not only engage with fans directly, but also recognize them and reward them for participation, whether that's, being one of the first people to sign up for the community or purchase a drop or register for pre-sale for a tour, or actually creating fan art and submitting it to the artist. We have a studio surface in all of our communities, just kind of our social layer where fans can submit fan art, user generated content, photos and videos from shows. And the artist can actually recognize their favorite contributions, boost them, and pin them to the top as artist picks. So creating these rails for artists to safely recognize fans in a way that just isn't possible in traditional socials has been something that's really resonated with fans. And, eventually the idea there is, once you bring the fan ecosystem back onto artists and owned and operated channels, there's this amazing opportunity to, turn that ecosystem almost into a marketplace in a sense where you can actually have artists and fans collaborating where, let's say the artist says, wow, I actually really like this collection. Would you want to release it as a co-signed collection? Would you want to release it as artist?
Oh my God.
Derek Davies collaboration and split the proceeds from that, or have the artist share go into a community treasury to fund community activations. I think there's so much that you can do with this technology and in this space where, step one is simply bringing the ecosystem back onto artists and owned and operated channels. Like I and co-founders, we grew up at the kind of tail end of that, send something off to a PO box and get X, Y, and Z fan club stickers, patches, et cetera, back in the mail 4 times a year. And then there's these really engaged fan forums and message boards that are actually on the artist's website that I grew up with in high school. And all of a sudden social media comes along over a decade ago and just completely blows that ecosystem apart. So now the fan conversation is happening over here on Reddit, over here on Twitter, over here on Instagram. And now here, with what we're building for the first time, there's this opportunity to bring that back onto artist owned and operated channels and bring all this fan art that's scattered all over the internet back under one roof and do it in a way where the artist actually owns that data. They own that relationship. They can engage with these people directly. And it's a massive opportunity. And I think a lot of it boils down to just this really simple concept of let's make the artist website a place that people want to spend time and do things. It used to be
not just check tour dates. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah. It used to be that the artist website used to be where you would hear news from the artist first, you would meet other fans. And now it's become the biggest afterthought, the most underutilized surface in an artist toolkit, where just as you said, you throw the tour dates up, kick people out to socials. Maybe people will spend some time there buying merch, but it's really just let's recrop the album cover, the single cover, throw up the tour dates, kick people out to socials. And that's it. So making the artist website, bringing value back to that surface and making it a world where people want to spend time and do things is an enormous opportunity. And that's something that resonates with every artist, whether they're excited about Web3 or not. They're honestly, you're right. My website sucks. So I think there's a huge opportunity.
They're help me out.
At the very least.
Yeah. And that's a really exciting thing, right? Is I think even with some of our previous podcast guests, something we've talked about all the time is Web3 will only be successful when we don't really even have to use the word, right? People get too caught up in the technology of NFTs, crypto, Web3, and they always get this impression of we're trading monkey pictures, but really it's just a technology to unlock new experiences. And I really respect and admire what you were able to pull up, I think, through your music experience and working with these artists. That's how we can actually create this new world where, you're talking about, we're taking power back from the social media platforms where artists can own their platform. So just big props.
Yeah.
Big props.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And big props on educating the art. You said you're approaching each artist differently. And it's to a certain degree, it's kind of on you guys a little bit to educate these artists of the value of utilizing this ecosystem. And so I think it's a super valuable and unique thing that you guys are doing and the approach that you're taking with some of these artists, like you said, meeting them where they're at so that they do feel empowered to go down this road.
100%. And I think we're also not anti-web too. I think we look forward to, we are working on collaborations with a number of these platforms. And I think we're not of the mind that Web3 is going to replace Web2 or overthrow these broken systems. It's something that's going to live a long time and provide this deeper layer for fans, for the biggest fans to go deeper and really connect directly with artists. I think Spotify and Instagram are still enormously valuable as this is where fans are still going to like discover your music first. This is where casual and passive listeners will go to engage and become.
Yes.
And then we want to create this layer where almost just like Patronage Plus layer where fans can go deeper, to engage directly with the artist, to immerse themselves in their world in a way that feels, interactive and bespoke and, customized to their interests. And, I think there's such an amazing opportunity, but the artist website should be this like their creative universe should just spill out onto this page in a way that doesn't exist right now. And I think bringing value back to that surface and creating this new layer that can sit alongside the existing platforms is really what we're.
Yeah, it's interesting. I was actually going to call that out. It was like, although it's a little bit of a travesty what's happening with the TikTok age with like, 2 to 3 second, video snippets. And I know even nowadays, like entire artists, let alone like albums are being created around TikTok virality, like the
Mhm.
chorus, the sounds, so I
For
think that,
music. That's basically
yeah,
what it is. Yeah.
definitely. Yeah.
It's crazy. It's like, I mean, TikTok in some ways is just great democratization of the music industry where anyone with,
Mhm.
a phone or a laptop can go viral and have a career as an artist. But it's also creating this world where more artists are being signed than ever before. And it's putting this enormous amount of strain on
Uh-huh.
major label system. Like labels don't have enough people to work all of these projects. And
Uh-huh.
it's created like as much as it's given more artists than ever before, record deals and a chance at a music career. It's also created this like graveyard of one hit wonders. And I think, a big thing that we've seen over and over again in the music industry is if something goes too quickly before there's a foundation, before there's a fan base, before there's a story, something starts going on TikTok and you take it to radio. And even if it hits the top 20, top 10, top 40, if there's no fan base or foundation to sustain it when that song peters out, more often than not, that's, going to not going to lead to a long-term career. And I think, especially when labels start spending as if they've got this, the next massive artist because they've got this thing that's going viral, but there's no real fan base there to sustain it. And so for every Lil Nas X, there's hundreds and I mean, soon to be thousands of artists who like had that moment, got the major label deal, and 18 months later are, right back where they started and probably burned out on what they thought was their dream because of,
Yep.
what can't possibly have amounted to a positive experience given how quickly and disposable things are coming. So things have become. So I think it's, everything that we're building is it's in reaction to like the growing disposability of the current music industry. Like content has just become so disposable. There's 100,000 songs a day uploaded to Spotify every day. And that's like an insane
Yeah.
number. That number was insane. 5 years ago, that number was 40,000. And that was insane then. And to see it scale up to 100,000 now, there's more noise to cut through than ever before. There aren't enough resources to properly sustain all of these artists and their creative vision. And it's harder and harder to develop a massive fan base because you don't have these direct interactions. And
Yeah.
so I think we're entering an era of music that's becoming more and more fragmented. I mean, it's talked about a lot how there's this dwindling supply of true festival headline caliber artists because the ecosystem is becoming more and more fractured. And in some ways that's positive because it's almost like a democratization of success. Things are being spread further and further and more artists are achieving more mid-level success than the 1% achieving massive success. But at the same time, it's creating like a much more fragmented ecosystem where it's harder and harder to cut through than ever before. So whether it's, what we're building currently with some of the larger artists or what we're looking to build long term in terms of building tools to help artists of all sizes build a more sustainable fan base and more direct relationship with their fans, I do think we're hitting, I think it's much needed. I think we're hitting a fracture point in the current music industry and artists are just burning out left, right, and center. I think the most common complaint I hear from artists is that they feel like it's just as important for them to be a social media influencer, content creator, as it is for them to be an amazing artist. And so the last thing, when we talk to artists about what we're doing with Medallion, it's like, we don't want to add another step to the content treadmill. We just want to create a space where you can create more value around the art that you already have. Yep. And make sure that that is reaching your fans directly in a way that you can't guarantee on social platforms currently. I mean, if you've got 1 million fans, you're hard pressed to reach more than 8 or 9% of them without putting a spend behind it. So I think just creating these rails where artists can, sell tickets, sell albums, sell merch directly to their fans without having to pay to reach them, is a massive one, and something that we're really excited to develop out further over the next few months and over the next few years with the grand arc of Medallion.
Yeah. We wanted to ask about a recent announcement that Spotify came up with. I think you probably know what we're talking about. But before I get into that, I did just quickly, because it's just pinged me as you were talking. When you think about Medallion, I don't know if you guys view it as sort of like an aggregator, since obviously each artist has their own, I don't know, fan base and world within the platform. But I guess like just bringing it back to the marketing question, right? Staying true to the theme of this podcast. Do you find that I guess this is like a 3-part question, right? How do you view Medallion? Like, do you view it as like an aggregator where people can discover new artists, or do you kind of rely on the social element, as we were saying, for kind of that top of the funnel awareness, discoverability, and then the Medallion worlds is where, the higher intent, so to speak, marketing language, fan base can dig deeper and, get that added value. And I asked that because I know you said you work directly with a lot of these artists, PR companies and like marketing company or marketing firms in order to market, their fan base within Medallion. But do you also have any efforts marketing Medallion as a platform itself for those users who are just looking to get on and discover these worlds instead of relying on social media for that discoverability awareness factor?
I think for the time being, it's less of a certain place for fans to discover artists and more place for fans who are already fans of that artist to discover a direct relationship with that artist, to discover a direct relationship with other fans who are fans of that artist in a way that it is currently quite difficult given the existing options in the current music industry landscape. So I think marketing around the actual platform more broadly is not something that we're focused on as much as we are just creating the richest possible experience for the biggest fans that are art, giving them that place to go where they can dive so much deeper and also meet other like-minded fans.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. So going back to that topical news that I was mentioning, I think it was yesterday morning on crypto Twitter, Spotify announced that they're now beginning to experiment with Web3. They're doing things like token enabled. I think they're having like a token enabled pilot. There's a couple initiatives around that. With that being said, how do you envision the future of streaming platforms such as Spotify and how they interact with platforms like Medallion over time?
Yeah, and so I think I think what they're currently testing, I think it's an amazing signal that I'm extremely excited about, more so than what the actual product that's being offered is. Effectively, if you own a Kingship NFT, you can access a token gated playlist created by Kingship.
Yeah.
The song
And they have
doesn't
like
play
an
with it enough.
AI element too. I forgot the details of it, but yeah.
Yeah, I think the AI piece is separate from the token gating pilot, but with the what you're accessing as a kingship holder, you're not accessing unique content necessarily, other than it's a playlist that's been curated by Kingship. But there's tens of thousands of playlists on Spotify, and I think there's over 3,000 official Spotify playlists. So you're drawing from the same pool. You're not accessing exclusive content. And I also think that Apple and Spotify. Uh, 8 or 10 years ago, they both experimented heavily with like windowing exclusive content. The entire music industry kind of joined hands and was like, this is not the future. This is creating a terrible fan and listening experience. So like, let's not do that. So I don't necessarily know if like token gated exclusive content is the future on Spotify, but I do think token gated experiences, starting with something like playlisting, is the really exciting sign. We've actually been experimenting with community playlists on the Medallion side over the past few weeks, but this news was well timed, where we're letting fans suggest, suggest playlists that they want to see at like the official My Morning Jacket, One Big Family is the name of the official My Morning Jacket, One Big Playlist, where fans suggest songs and the ones that get boosted and get the most likes actually go on to the official playlist. And so every month there's an official community playlist. Fans get to see their contribution there on the artist's official Spotify homepage, and creating this like collaborative experience where whether it's playlists or you could take that a step further. And let's say Millennium goes out to his fans and says, hey, what do you guys want to see me play in the next tour? Like submit your fan favorites and I'll choose my favorites for the set list. Obviously, most artists are pretty like locked in with like 70 to 80% of what their set list is. But most artists I talk to, like it's those last 3 or 4 songs where they're choosing between their favorite songs that they know are like fan favorites. Like you've gone through all the singles on that, the core meat of the set list, but like, having actual fan input around what they'd like to hear for those last 3 or 4 slots is actually something that a lot of artists would value, not only in terms of like, let's create this like better fan experience where they can feel more involved, but just like having that direct feedback. So this idea of like creating those rails for artists to take direct fan input and see it play out on their actual tour with the fans feeling that they had an involvement in that is a really, really exciting opportunity as well.
I love that. Makes a lot of sense. This is really fun. I actually have 1 or 2 more, right? Because I'm really enjoying just like kind of hearing just all of it. Number one, because I think you're one of the people actually doing the whole Web3 thing in the right way. I think from what I can tell is, onboarding these people and recognizing it's a technology, not the end goal, right? So what are we creating? And actually, so on that point, right, going back to, some of the folks I know who still have that skepticism, right? So I think this is a direct question. I texted some friends who were like, one of them, she was at Sony Music for many years and she's did A&R there. And she's now, doing music out in LA, some other stuff. But she had a question, which is, if I want to get into Web3 as a label or musician, is making an NFT the only means of entering and or capitalizing in the space? So we'll love to hear if someone were to ask you that at a party or wherever, how would you respond to that? What would your take on that be?
Yeah, I mean, I guess making NFT is like the most direct way of capitalization.
Yeah.
But I think it's really like what Web3 has created is it's so community first and it's so inclusive and welcoming. And I think the best way to enter space is not minting an NFT. It's reaching out, immersing yourself in some of these communities, in Discords and Twitter spaces, following thought leaders, following other artists, reaching out to artists and players in the space directly. I think, one thing that I was really taken aback by when I first kind of entered the space at the end of 2020 is like just how much more welcoming and inclusive it was in the traditional music industry. Just like everyone be like, oh yeah, you got to meet this person, we should work on this together. And I think in music industry, it's really about like, can someone else get out of this? You don't really feel that here. And obviously that was at the very, very onset of all of this, but I think that remains true. Like artists especially are really excited to show people the ropes and, welcome in people and encourage them to ask questions. And so just trying to like immerse yourself in the conversation and the culture is definitely step one. I think I've told a lot of artists like starting out, like a lot of new artists, like, if you have even so much as a passing interest in this, like you are going to get 10x the ROI on your time if you put energy into trying to like figure out this space and how it could integrate into your music and how it could help you promote and, sustain your music and create a vision. And then you would just kind of doubting into the void that is, Instagram, the 100,000 songs that are uploaded a day to Spotify, et cetera. Like it's so hard to cut through the noise there. And there's so many more meaningful relationships, both in terms of like, there's the financialization piece, but there's also just like the community building. A lot easier to cultivate a community in this space currently than it is in the wider music industry at large. So that's a long answer to a short question, but hopefully that.
No, it's good. Well, and then just following up on that, right? What I'd love to know is also when it comes to like taking the plunge, right? I think some of the communities I've mentioned to friends in the past have been, Water Music, obviously they do some great kind of editorial and research on how Web3 and music come together. But do you have any other recommendations for how someone could get more involved in the space if they're first time, Web3 curious person?
Yeah, I mean, I think water music was like
Yeah.
ground zero for my own exploration
Yeah.
into the space. So I can't speak highly of it enough. I think there's a great thought leaders. I think Ben James, music band used his handle. He's the Web3 writer for Billboard, but then just started his own outlet called Ziggy Ziggy, where he's really trying to bring the curation back to music in a way that it hasn't really been since blog culture died out. With Web3 as his main focus there. Cooper Turley, who's one of our investors and advisors, is an incredible thought leader who, has done multiple kind of cohorts, first for artists looking to enter Web3 and now for managers looking to educate themselves on Web3 and Web3 strategies. So he's built a lot of incredible tools for people looking to come into the space. And yeah, I think water and music is still the gold standard, probably the most accessible point. And then Black Dave is a big thought leader who's very active, and he's an active contributor about water and music, but has also amassed a large Twitter following, and is an incredible thought leader in the space, as is Verite, who's an artist that I've worked with extensively over the years at Neon Gold. So, the great thing in this space is that I think the most prominent artists also tend to be the most prominent thought leaders. So I think, and the experimentation is always ongoing and always experimenting with new mechanisms and strategies of bringing music into the world and cultivating, which is so exciting. I've never seen innovation at this pace in music anytime previously in my 15 plus years of working in it.
Happy to hear it.
That's
That's what we all need.
incredible. Yeah, I think that's a great way to segment into rapid fire. I couldn't think of a better line
Yep.
to end the discussion on. Okay, great. So pretty self-explanatory. We ask the question, answer the first thing that comes to mind rapidly. So with that being said, first question, Web3 project, not including your own at Medallion, that you are most bullish on.
I think, I'm a big fan of Google's since day one. I think when it comes to scaling Web3 to the masses, they are the kind of established blue chip brand that's going to do it. Obviously, Bored Ape are like the household name, if you will. Bored Ape is the household name, if you will. But I think what Doodles are building, I think that brand is much more accessible globally. And I think the way they are taking the approach to onboarding more users into the ecosystem with some of the more recent partnerships they've announced is really inspiring. I love Pool Suite, but a day one holder. I've known Marty, the founder, for years, and he's probably my favorite marketing mind that I've ever met. And so when he popped up in Web3 and we reconnected, it was so excited to see, the world that he's been building out now that he has all these incredible Web3 world building tools. So that's a project that I've loved from day one. I think they're doing really, really interesting things that are going to kind of push the cultural impact of the space forward.
As you know, I'm based in Miami Beach and I'm in the midst of planning my wedding. And I literally tweeted the other day, I think I kind of have to make it Pool Suite theme. I couldn't think of anything
Right?
more.
There you
But yeah, I
go.
love Pool Suite. Cool. And then the next one is biggest professional learning from 2022. I told you yesterday, this is my favorite one. Always get the best answers.
Yeah. I guess time management's my boring answer. That was a real big call for 2022. I think closing a fundraise and having a baby and getting married and launching the company was a crowded 2022 bingo card. But no, I think our biggest learning as a company was just not following the trends and following our gut. I think, especially in this space where there's a new meta, there's a new trend every 2 to 4 weeks. I also think at the time when we were fundraising, we only got a handful of no's, but I think those no's were from folks who thought it wasn't Web3 enough, so to speak. And I think at this stage, I think it's, the Web 2.5 approach and the need for simplifying the experience to foster mass adoption has become critically apparent. So I think, keeping our heads down and building true to our vision, at the time when we started building on Polygon, it had this kind of stigma as spam NFTs that the OpenSea wall would automatically hide, and real culture wasn't being built on Solana, built on Polygon. And I think now
Right.
that, we're 18 months on from that point, I think Polygon is where you're going to see a lot of the biggest cultural happenings when it comes to actually scaling this technology to the masses. I mean, whether it's what we hope to be doing on the Medallion side with blue chip artists, or what Starbucks, Nike are doing, some of these experiences that they're building out for fans.
We're massively bullish on Polygon ourselves. I mean, as you saw, like we had Amanda on last week. Love that you guys are doing it. I mean, we're going to deploy our own token onto it when we do, when we launch it. So it's, at the end of the day, right? Like we want Web3 to be successful. It's how do you bring on the masses? That's it. Like we can't just be, kind of playing in our own little sandbox. We're going to invite everyone in. So I love that. I love that. All right. And I'll follow up and ask the last two questions. If you had $1 million, what would you go build in Web3 today? Outside of Medallion, let's say, it didn't exist. You were in a different world or you got bought out or I don't know. Yeah. Separate.
Outside of Medallion, hard to think. Gee, I had a bunch of Medallion answers ready to go for that.
We can do that too. Yeah. What do you think? Yeah.
I mean, I'm laser focused on Medallion and the mission right now. I mean, really, it's less about money and more about time and bandwidth.
Yeah.
I think there's so many incredible directions and so many incredible ideas coming from all corners of the company. I think that we've got such an incredible team, and I think it's just about bandwidth. I think we would right now we're in a position where, I guess a fortunate position, but also a challenging position where we're kind of having to turn away 9 out of 10 interested artists. And I think we would all like to be in a position where we could onboard all artists of all sizes from day one. But I think just like we're in a position where we kind of have to build this slowly with the kind of more curated private beta approach. I think we would all just love to be able to work with all of our favorite artists and artists of all sizes. So I think, less about money, more about bandwidth and time. Maybe that's an imperfect answer, but
sounds like you just need more
little
there
soon.
There you go.
We just need more time, man.
Yeah. There we go. Okay, cool. And then the last thing, just a fun bit, and then a quick bit about you is craziest predictions for Web3 by end of this year, 2023, February 28th by December 31st. What do you think the craziest headline is going to be by the end of this year that we may not anticipate? We may anticipate. Any thoughts?
I don't know if it's a crazy headline, but I mean, it definitely feels crazy given, I guess, where we're at the moment. But I think fans are going to finally start to embrace Web3 experiences, mainstream fans, mainstream audiences. And that's not necessarily they're going to embrace like NFTs or collecting NFTs as speculative assets. I think just in terms of just embracing the experiences that Web3 can allow. And I mean, that's my hope on the Medallion side, but I think also just in terms of like some of the more interesting activations that some of these bigger brands are doing. I mean, I mentioned Starbucks and Nike on Polygon previously, but I think that's what I'm most excited about, most hopeful. I think that's the biggest hurdle right now. Fans, it's not creating fan sentiment and kind of undoing a lot of the damage that's been done by some of the false and overblown headlines, some of the unfortunately true and negative headlines. And I think navigating that fan sentiment and helping fans who think NFTs are just expensive JPEGs of a monkey that they can't afford, like helping them to realize the incredible experiences that this can unlock. So I mean, that's not the craziest. I mean, I also think like, I don't know if it's by the end of this year. I think at some point in the next 12 to 18 months, we will see the first like Web3 native music artist break into the mainstream, whether that's a song or like a full artist, like a project that like was born natively in Web3, took its first steps in the space to cross to the mainstream, whether that's a viral hit or a full, proper, sustainable national touring act. I do think we are going to see that. I don't know who it's going to be yet. I think there's a bunch of incredible creators in the space and a lot of amazing innovators. I would say probably like in Web3 music right now, there's probably better marketers than there are musicians on the whole. but I think there's some really interesting projects at the moment. There's a friend of mine, Ryan Man and Tia Stola. They've launched a project called Beach Crimes, which they're really successful songwriters. Ryan wrote Shut Up and Dance for Walk the Moon. Between them, and Tia was Grammy nominated on the last Justin Bieber album, and they've written hits for Brenda Carpenter and Halsey and the Chainsmokers. And they've been writing songs for other artists their entire career, and they've decided to take things back for themselves and actually launch a project, releasing songs of their own, releasing 24 songs in 48 weeks, natively in Web3. And I think the caliber of music, it's a combination of songs that, felt like they needed to be theirs, but also songs that that held for 18 months. And, Galantis, other major artists, held, but ultimately chose not to release, or the guys chose to just take them back for this project. And so I think it's a really exciting narrative for writers and producers, kind of, taking things back for themselves and owning the narrative. And I think releasing 24 songs in 48 weeks is insane, but the caliber of music is absolutely incredible. And so I'm really excited to see what they do. They just started rolling that out a couple of weeks ago. So my hope is that we see a truly Web3 native artist enjoy mainstream success at some point by the end of this year or early next.
Let's see what happens.
For sure going to happen. Yeah.
I think it won't. Yeah.
Just to wrap it up, so we probably all have to jump. Just wanted to give you the opportunity to show yourself, essentially. Where can our listeners find Medallion, find you, anything that you're working on and you want to share? I'm including a bunch of stuff that was mentioned in the show notes, but yeah, would love to have you share out where everyone can find you and everything you're working on.
Yeah. So controversially, especially in Web3, I don't have a personal Twitter account, but you can find Medallion at Medallion FM on Twitter, medallion.fm on Instagram, and medallion.fm online, which is our brand new website that just launched last week. So very proud of that. Everyone can go check that out. We've got direct links to all of our communities there. And highly recommend it. We're very proud of it.
Epic.
Awesome. All right. Well, thank you so much again, Derek. It was lovely having you on. Really insightful conversation. So appreciate all that. Blake, any last thoughts, words before we wrap up?
I think that's it. Really bullish on Medallion, really bullish on the future of Web3 and music and how it's all going to change the world. So keep doing your good work, Derek. And we'll see you in Breck. It's nice and house.
Thanks so much.
We'll see you soon. Yeah.
All right.
Bye.
Thanks so much. Have a good one. Bye.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of W3G. If you'd like to learn more about Web3 marketing, please visit myosin.xyz to get started.
And of course, if you're a fan of the show, please be sure to show us your support by subscribing and leaving us a review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or whatever platform you're using to tune in.
Thank you so much for listening, and we'll see you next time.